good morning, and this is the second part of this today's session. And we are here to discuss about the digital future. And hopefully all of you in this auditorium are naturally interested in that part of it. And we are people who are working in this field. This is something which has been talked about for quite some time, but it has already become a reality, and it is going to be the future. And it is only a question of when this is going to happen. So we will follow a format where I would like this to be more conversational, because there are a lot of thoughts. Nobody has any clear one idea which is going to. There are a few things which are definitely going to be the case. So the format will be, we will use this panel more on a conversational mode. So before that, I thought I'll just give a little introduction to all the eminent panelists here. Let me start off with Mr. Vijayaraghavan. All of you know him, and he's fondly known as GVR. He's ex-member of Kerala State Planning Board, director of VMA Consultant, and he is known by almost a synonym to the Technopark, founding it quite early in 1990 and playing a pivotal role in the growth of IT industry in Kerala, and also paving a major way in a national level. And that's only one part of him. He is on the board of, in fact, Suntec, and he's also the director in UST Global. And most importantly, it's a new startup. I would say the CADR, which is the Center for Autism and Other Disabilities Rehabilitation Research and Education Center, which is one of his new venture. And when I am talking about that, we have to mention about his previous startup, I would call it as that way, which is NISH, which was the National Institute for the Speech and Hearing, which has become the National University today. And I'm not going to the details, but all of you know him very well. Let me welcome him to this panel. Thank you, Mr. Vijayaraghavan. Mr. Vinod Kumar, he is the Managing Director and CEO of Subex. Vinod is responsible for leading the strategic direction for the company and driving its execution by fostering the right culture and leadership and talent development. Prior to the role, Vinod served as the CEO of Subex. As you know, Subex is one of the earliest product companies out of India, and been part of the telecom revolution and played a big role. And he was responsible for the worldwide operations of Subex. I welcome Mr. Vinod to this panel. Mr. Richard Antony, Director, India Operations, GDS Ernst & Young. Richard is the Director of India Operations of EY Global Delivery Services and operates from Trivandrum, Kerala. He's joined the EY in 1997 in Bahrain as the Technology and Knowledge Management member supporting 14 countries for Middle East region, and was part of EMEA Global Operations. He started his career in 1993. Prior to joining EY, he worked with major companies like Bank of America and Proline Sports, etc. Richie Zasi is known amongst his colleagues, holds a degree in computer technology from Mumbai. He lives in Trivandrum with his family and enjoys reading football and interacting with startups a lot. Sorry. And let me welcome Richie to this panel. So I will probably start. So once again, welcome. So we all know the transformation which is happening in the whole world, and especially within the context of the technology, how it is affecting. And it is not one part of it. It is not just IT, or it is not material science. It is the manufacturing. It is definitely a swarm of technologies and the changes that is happening in this world. So it is imperative that it is going to affect the the mankind, and it is being termed as the fourth industrial revolution by the World Economic Forum. So the context is this, and it will be great if each of us can share our thoughts on what you think. I thought in 4 dimensions. One, about the impact that it has got the humans and we as individuals, as societies, as organization, because organization is also part of the shaping up the future, and the mankind as a whole. So that's with that, I thought, let me start with Vinod, and I'll fill in my thoughts at some point of time.
Good morning, everyone. Before I start off, just as a brief addition to the introduction that Mr. Nandakumar said, I hail from Trivandrum. I'm a product of CET Trivandrum. I did all my education in Trivandrum and then worked outside. With respect to Subex, we primarily work in the space of digital trust. Have been around for quite a while, and we cater to predominantly to the telecom segment at this point in time, and our products entail a lot of ML and a digital, serving the digital ecosystem. I also thank TiEcon to invite me for this thing. It's my privilege to be here. Okay, now talking about the digital, to me, if you look at what digital will provide, the simple answer is that today, if you look across, there's a lot of friction. On a day-to-day basis, you feel a lot of friction. And the quantum of friction that you feel will depend upon your stature and who you are in the society. My view is that digital as a technology or as a way of life will help us in reducing the friction and has got the potential even to completely remove this friction by and by to the entire section of the society. So from the, as Nandakumar mentioned, the potential and the impact it can have is tremendous. Now, what is aiding or what is fueling this digital revolution? To me, there are 2 basic things that is sort of driving this. One is the exponential growth that we are seeing on the computational technology, where every year the computers are becoming much faster and faster. The second aspect is the availability of data today. There's tremendous availability of data. Now, both of them are being married, and some large use cases which are otherwise very difficult to be found are being analyzed and solved today. So I guess that we talked about a lot of AI, and Professor Damodar talked about the AI. AI is there to stay. There's a lot of hype at this point in time, but I guess that it is becoming a reality. It is going to change our lives slowly. But that is a big transformation that we are talking about. Before I hand over to Richie, a few challenges that we will have to handle when we talk about digital is with respect to getting the full potential. There's a talent. That's an important aspect that we have to look at, the talent required for us to move this transformation. Then the other thing is with the regulation and the support that we need as an ecosystem if we want to provide and create some great IP and technology out of this country and out of this state. Then the third would be while digital will give us a lot of ability, it also introduces some very drastic vulnerabilities, the security aspect. So there is a need for us to address this while becoming more and more smarter digital. You need to also be safer. So that is also a very important consideration. Even in a country like India, which was primarily the interaction of transactions was happening based on local trust. We have started getting more comfortable with a distributed trust. So trust is being evolved as a distributed thing, and we seem to be okay with it. And that's, again, a big support for digitization. Now, from an entrepreneur point of view, this morning, Nitin, when we were talking about Happy Shappy, he was mentioning about, there was a question as to why you came to India. My view is that most of the innovations which we are talking about digital at this point in time, which is predominantly happening in the Silicon Valley, addresses or is meant primarily for the top 1 billion population. Now, the rest 6 billion are not getting the true effect of digitization as yet. And all the innovations happened so far and is happening today in the Silicon Valley is aimed towards that 1 billion. So there is an opportunity for entrepreneurs here to step up and crack that for the rest of 6 billion, which I think is a huge opportunity. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you. And in continuation to what was said, from a corporate side and from an industry standpoint, what we as EY look at what's happening out in the ecosystem is a dependency that is growing day on day on digital, right? As we look at the needs of the industry, I play an operations role, right? Rajesh, who is here, who's a partner with EY, plays the role of attending to clients as well as looking at what industry problems to solve. But as I look from my perspective in operations, I look at where is the talent coming, right? What is the need in the industry? How is the next gen or the new millennium that we are looking at, the kids that are out there who come to the industry, what are their expectations? And then how does that bridge from a skill pattern to the industry and how it can be leveraged? But when we look out from a perspective of what is out there, there's trillions and trillions and peta data sizes that are out there. What are we doing about it? We are generating so much data that I think digital going forward is the future. It's new, right? It has been there for a long time. It is that we are awakening a lot more to the amount of data we're generating to analyze. What are we doing about it? And how do we take that and leverage that, one, from a corporate standpoint, two, from an industry standpoint, and three, from a social standpoint also. We just heard Professor Damodaran speaking about how this data can be taken and overlaid, right, for decision-making. And decision-making sciences rely on data quite a lot. So when I look from my perspective, it is a area that is developing fast, right? But there's a lot from an entrepreneurial standpoint that I think there's a role to play, as well as a lot of opportunities that lie out there for companies that want to leverage on these technologies to start solving problems from the ecosystem.
I think I'll just try to see if I can bring this down to Kerala and the situation for us here. I think the opportunities are huge. The challenges are also equally. So one of the things which is there is that from a few years ago when we thought digital meant for the software companies, the IT companies, that's changed. It is not even industry. Okay, and industry, of course, has moved a lot in that direction. Whether it is healthcare or whether it is tourism or any new entrepreneurial venture that you start, basically digital is going to be the core to that. So it's necessary that it is the differentiation earlier was in terms of you know, the kind of the right guy you had on your board or the person who really started it off. Today, a lot of the differentiation is going to be how do you use the technology, in what way are you going to use it. So if you really look at all the new companies which have come up, whether who've been successful, you find that they have used technology in a very, very big way. And I think many of you here would know, but just to, you know, the Uber thing's been talked about a lot, but I mentioned that just for a second to say ultimately what you should realize that the Uber software was developed in Varkala. Okay, the Uber software was developed in Varkala, but the guys were not Malayalis. They actually came in from the valley and then they spent several weeks in Varkala and developed their software. So the environment is there, at least the climate is there for that. The other big thing for us is that the education system for us is actually a pain. The higher education system in Kerala needs to change because unfortunately there have been decisions which say MOOC is not accepted. And you know, there's no credit given if you do anything on MOOC. You have to study only what your teachers in the engineering colleges or the colleges tell you. So some of those need to change. And the only way that will change if the market starts looking for people who have the skills that you want. Unfortunately, our university system is not changing fast enough to give those skills. The third point is that government needs to adapt. So one good thing I've seen in the last few years is there are several use cases which government themselves have started identifying where they want people to come in, and some of the startups are work together. But I think that's an opportunity for industry to look at use cases, go and tell government, I have a solution for this, and can we do that? We also have a big advantage that we have 2 smart cities under the Government of India program, which is Trivandrum and Kochi, which are both under the Government of India program, and there is money available under that. So these are all opportunities which are there. And for an organization like TI and for the people who've come in here, I think the most important thing is how do we capitalize or how do we exploit those opportunities that are available and how do we take it forward? So I think that is something which is important. That is where all of us need to start focusing on. And I'm sure that many of the startups are thinking on those lines, and that's what we should be looking at. I think this is what I would like to say initially as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vijayaraghavan. And let me just, from Vinod's point of view, it's more about the availability of the data and then the aspect of the regulation and the vulnerabilities and the distributed trend, I mean, in terms of the blockchain and the infrastructure which is coming in. And availability of, the significance of the data and from a corporate point of view, how utilizing that, the amount of data and the computations, and ultimately the context of the Kerala. I mean, I thought I'll raise this a little on a higher the thing. And if you were to look at the technology that's coming in, some of them are absolutely real, and some of them are a little fictional at this stage. But the fact that you have human brain interfaces available today, at least to a minimal level, then talking about the fact that the singularity is the eventuality, that's when the artificial intelligence is going to impact, I mean, maybe come equal to the human mind. At some point, it will overtake that. And that is the reality. Another aspect is the robotization which is happening in terms of the hard work being taken away from the human work. And it is definitely going to impact the human beings of the future. Now, yes, it is a little bit away from, it might be the fiction of things which might be happening in the US or in the developed world. But these technologies is available open and it can be easily adapted. But the impact of this in a country like us, and a place like us, is significant, right? So would you be able to envision what kind of impact that it would have? I'm talking about maybe a world where the work which we define as the work today do not exist, right? And humans don't have to work for their existence. Maybe there is a universal basic income that might be coming in, support people that. Has anybody thought about that kind of possibilities of nirvana? Anyone want to?
Yeah. Let me take a step. Yeah. So it's quite interesting that you mentioned about the opportunities in the country, which I guess it's real. With the push that we are seeing with respect to digital, you know, a lot of big problems can be addressed here. Let me take one example. The World Health Organization stipulates that about 23.5 medical practitioners should be there for every 10,000 people. In our country, it is about 15. Now, 81%, more than 81% of the specialists required in primary nurseries, I mean medical nurseries in the villages are vacant. And I don't think that in the short term, we would be able to fix all of these things, meaning by hiring and doing that. Technology will have to be adopted. Look at the inclusion of the people. About under 10 to 15 million people are really using all the credit facilities that we have from the bank. A significant portion do not even come to the normal economy. So these are big problems that can be addressed with technology, but there are big challenges. As Mr. Nandakumar said, there are models available elsewhere, but they won't work in the country. So a lot of data need to be provided and to train that models which are relevant to our country. And that requires two important aspects. One is the access to data. Two is the computational power that is required for you to process the data and get those models. And this is where, as Mr. Vijayaraghavan said, we will have to have a collaboration with the state whereby we get access to the data, we get some social or a public let's say, a platform which is commercial in nature, but it makes it easy for me to go and develop those models. So use cases are plenty. I'm directly involved in some of those things. For example, we have a particular study doing by looking at coughing. I mean, you know that TB is a big problem in the country, and early detection of TB can help in drastically reducing the cost of the medical medicine in the first place, right? The whole medical thing. So just imagine if you have an app and you just have cough. I mean, it's easy to cough in front of an app, and based on the tone of the cough, you can figure out it is a TB or not. It's early signs of TB or not. Now, then it can be referred to this thing. So I'm just taking an example which is being tried out for application for our kind of thing. So there are plenty of them. Flow-based lending is another thing where every day the interest rate is about 10%. You get 900 rupees on a day for a normal vendor. He has to give us 1,000 rupees by the end of the day. That's 10% per day. Now, the only reason why the organized sector is not getting in there because you can't underwrite that risk. So if there is a flow-based way, I can look at the risk, then I can bring a lot of capital into those small areas, which can significantly increase the economy and the life and the experience that each of these sections or underserved sections of the market enhancing. So opportunities are big, but we need a big ecosystem support to solve that issue.
Maybe I just bring in that basically what you're saying is there is a billion, systems are built for 1 billion people, but the reality is that it can be adopted very well in a country like us. So the opportunity for entrepreneurs is to locate those white spaces and adopting these possibilities in Indian context and making maybe even 10 times or 100 times better efficient, because our problem needs large scale, but it needs data availability and people's ability to entrepreneurially address this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Just yesterday you saw the robo which was here, which is completely done in Kerala. They've of course imported some motors, etc. Now when you look at that and look at the cost of that, if there was some way that we could bring down the cost of that to less than ₹1 lakh and make it available to every school in Kerala, all right? You're talking of something completely different. So the idea here is that we need to see how can we bring down the cost of what is there. And taking on the healthcare thing which you said, actually you find today, I think there is more technology used in hospitals than you will find in many other industry that is there. So an interesting project which is going on with some group is working in Trivandrum. Today, a lot of the homes, especially those who are a bit well off, have diabetes, and therefore you will have those strips, and you do the checking on that on a daily basis. It roughly costs about what, 15, 20 rupees per test that is there. Somebody's looking at doing it for less than a couple of rupees. Okay, and and the one big problem here is that you have to take a drop of blood out. He's saying no, either urine or saliva. And they will give you this thing. And all that is done is, there is no other equipment other than your phone. There is a strip available. It is applied on that. The color changes. You take a photograph, upload it. You get your results back in a couple of seconds. So but the big thing there is not that alone. The data from that is something which is going to be very important. So you will get all the people who are using it, that data will be available. And as long as you don't intrude into the individual's privacy, that data can be used for a lot more things. So data, like somebody was mentioning yesterday, data is a new oil. There are a lot of such things which one needs to start thinking of. Right. And that is where the entrepreneurial opportunities will come up.
And that converting that into what in essentially you're saying, making it available as a platform for people to use that data and the insight from there. Please, Richie, up to your view.
Yeah, I will just touch upon another dimension which you had brought up, which was automation, right? And the impact of it on people now. The new word hype is that there'll be less human beings and more machines. I don't think that's going to happen, right? You talk about automation from a workforce management perspective. People think that automation is going to replace a lot of jobs, right? And people will be jobless. I don't think that is ever the end goal at all. Human beings are smarter and will continue to do something better. What we will see definitely is a redefinition from a digital age, the type of jobs that people will do, right? So today we no longer look at a full stack developer as a person who is highly skilled. That's a basic norm today in the digital world, right? So as we work with a lot of skills and people building skills, there are some basic things that is required in this digital world that every person will have to do. Vijayaraghavan sir talked about online learning, right? Is it an option today? I don't think so. If you need to be skilled in the digital world and catch up to the digital agenda, you definitely need to do a lot of self-learning. A lot of classroom learnings will have a different dimension. How much teachers can I get into the rural areas to teach in the villages on a high skill labor? Now, when you look at how digital will empanel that is, you can reach masses and then bring up the norm, which is your basic norm, into the digital education. Not that only digital will help, but I think a lot of other skills are developing, right? I am a father, and so when my son comes and he's doing his 12th, he comes and tells me, I ask him what is that he wants to do. Of course, in Kerala, it is engineering. So either you're engineering and medicine, so I'm expecting to hear an answer. And he said, I would like to be a chef, right? And I said, absolutely fine, right? Because that's a skilling.
He will be better employed for sure, is for sure.
Yes, and maybe use digital, right? Into recipes, into whatnot that needs to be done. So that's where the thinking of the youngsters and the minds are going. It's not that digital is a Heinz afterthought. It is the first thought that comes in how I'm going to live my world in the social and digital world.
Right. In fact, I take your point, but I would still like to challenge you one more dimensions of that. Let us put it this way. Definitely the hard work which it is going to be taken over by the machines. Would that happen?
Mundane work.
Mundane work.
Operationally, mundane work with a set pattern and process,
right,
where AI, ML comes into play, yes, definitely. Right. And that's how it has traditionally happened in the last 30, 40 years.
So let me take a point. Recently I was reading an article where miles of farmland is just being farmed by 2 or 3 robotic machines, right? And it keep on doing the work, and it exactly knows where the pesticide need to be applied because it senses with the sensors, and it is going around, and this is a combination of the farm equipment fully automated with powered by the AI, and also with the drones which can go and do what you call precision precision farming. So if you really look at that, which otherwise would require maybe thousands of people, right? Of course, in the Western world, that's not the case, but it's already been farmed by few people. But that kind of impact, when it comes to here, it is going to definitely have an impact, isn't it, on especially a country like...
You have a model on that at your
right,
center.
Right. Yeah. So would you just develop on that?
So I feel, yes, it will impact, but a different change in skills is I'm saying farmers will become supply chain people, right, where they will ensure, and today they depend on somebody else for supply chain. What is produced reaches the market without a middleman, right? So technology will definitely help, but it is the human element that needs to come. His domain expertise comes into play quite a lot whenever agriculture is done. Now, we had an interesting case with a big bank that came and said, traditionally loans are given, right, and collection of loans requires a human being. Can it be done that, I will fly a drone, take a geospatial view, assess the crop condition, and then process the loan, right, or the next set of loans? Can I take digital data from cows and do a retina scanning and ensure that it's the same cow that was purchased 2 years back, right? So So that's where even banks are thinking. So microloans, right, and microfinancing. So we see a lot of these emerging trends happening. Now, is it immediately commerciable? Possibly no, but I think that is where entrepreneurship comes into a lot of play. I can get something done in Silicon Valley, which has a different use case, but in India, the use cases are so diverse and so different that it has the opportunity for the whole ecosystem.
But again, without completing this particular point about the human impact, what does it mean to the talents of tomorrow? Would you like to?
I think one of the things it's very clear, and something which a lot of us keep telling, unless you are continuously learning, okay, you are left behind. This is not a 100-meter sprint. It's actually multiple marathons. So if you don't continuously, you don't conserve energy, you don't learn as you go, you don't know what's happening around you, you are lost. So it's very essential to be continuously learning. The second one is it's also going to create a new thing where, in the past there were these managers, okay, and you had managers and senior managers and general managers. You'll find most of them becoming irrelevant because everyone is going to be somebody who has to be hands-on and understands. So it is, the big difference is, again, I'm going to compare with the medical thing. Now, you can have a very, very good cardiologist, but you can be sure that that person is still, the senior most cardiologist is still practicing. He's a cardiac surgeon, he's still doing surgery, all right? But the number of surgeries he will do may increase because he has more assistants with him and he does the critical part and goes on. Unfortunately, in the IT sector and a lot of manufacturing, after some time, they just don't become hands-on anymore. They're telling people what to do. After some time, they don't even know what to tell people what to do. They're just managing them, seeing that the reports are coming. Those positions are going to be irrelevant. So you're going to find that unless, like in the healthcare, if you don't continue to do surgery, you're no longer a surgeon. If you don't continue to do software development and you're not hands-on there, you're going to be without a job very soon. That was one. The other one is you're going to find a lot of them coming out with ideas. And I think that is where I think companies need to be encouraging people to actually farm off and start off new ventures. They have an idea, you incubate them within your company and allow them to go out. If required, support them in doing that. I think these are some things which are going to happen. So you're going to create, and that climate is good for us now. So we need to really look at, I think it's no longer the dependence on universities and all. I think I was talking to some university professors just the day before we started TiE, and I told them that if you don't change, the university is going to be irrelevant because nobody is going to look at the degree from where you got your degree. They're just going to look at what you know, and you will find that all these university professors will have no other work. Our tax money will go into just feeding them for some time. So they will become irrelevant very soon unless they're prepared to change. I find that change is happening in the bigger institutions, IIMs or the IITs. You find some level of change happening. But otherwise, in Kerala, there is no university which is going that way. And that's because they just don't want change. They're afraid of change. But it will overtake at some point of time.
Yeah, I have a couple of points there. The first one, from an adoption of digital perspective, the recent survey came out saying that just 26% of the companies that adopted digital were successful. And the primary reason is not because of technology. It's 50% technology, 50% mindset of the people. So that's an important aspect from an adoption of digital technology. Now, from a provider of digital technology or ML and AI, now this is something which you will hit very soon once you have the first or second customer. Now, Eckerson is an AI and a BI, let's say, a renowned person now. So he came in 2010 with an article, a blog post, where he defined the concept of a purple people. Now, it has become it is being used by all the big fours consulting now, and it's become very people, and people are talking about, I want a purple people. Now, the concept there was that there are people who know business well, but they don't know the technology and the architecture required to get the data. And on the other side, you have the technologists who know the architecture, but they don't have the business. And if you look at more AI and ML, people are going in that direction, and soon you will come to a point where you can't solve the problem. And we were hit, I mean, personally, we were hit. We started doing about 3.5 years back. And about a year and a half back, we got hit with this, that we can't solve some of those problems because you talk about AI being data. I mean, there is a kind of a fallacy that you just have data and insights and you can solve all the problem. It's not so, because a past data was probably catering to a past context. And is the context the same? If the contexts have changed, what biases have to be changed? And these are not technology problems. These are not business problems. This is a technology and business problem. And that's where now probably from a talent perspective, we should have more like purple people. And like talking to Ms. Vijayaraghavan's point, the education institutes are absolutely not understanding this. They are just producing IT, or business, not this purple thing. Now, the third aspect, also Mr. Vijayaraghavan mentioned about the managerial things, which is becoming irrelevant as gets more and more a technology thing. The fact is that today, managers or the execs spend a lot of time getting insights. Now, that is going to be done by a machine learning. So you have to be comfortable that insights is going to be generated, and you have an experiential knowledge. And nobody's going to challenge your experiential knowledge. But there is a database knowledge that's going to be, let's say, augmented. Now, you have to be comfortable with challenging your experiential knowledge with database-based knowledge. It's very difficult because, it's very difficult when you know that I believe in a particular way, but the data tells something different. To manage that, it's very difficult. So from a managerial standpoint, while there is a big transformation that need to happen, and IT has always been talked about a knowledge workforce. My feeling is that it is slowly time that we retire the knowledge workforce and sort of replace that with a wisdom workforce. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, it doesn't matter whether we go digital, we go blockchain, or whatever we are talking about it. At the end of the day, whatever we are going to do as a business or an enterprise is going to be a human-to-human connect. And there is something with the human, understanding the human-to-human connect, which goes beyond technology. The best of the analysis can give me a lot of insights, but then I take a gut-based decision. And some of the highest paid execs or the most successful people get that gut-based right. And that is something which you learn by wisdom. I mean, by age, and that wisdom comes in. So even today, if you look at the big companies like Facebook, Google, Airbnb, and all of them, Uber, they are infusing their young talents to bring in the wisdom. And a right alchemy of the technology and the wisdom will then start creating big use cases or result in creating big use cases which will work and which is sustainable. Today, you will see that some of the businesses like Google and others, Facebook, there's a big sustainability issues, right? Regulation is coming in. Why? Because they used to give us free, take the data, sold it without our consent. And regulation have started coming, and that was not a sustainable model. So once you have right mix of this wisdom and technology, then you start a sustainable progress, which is very important. So I think there is relevance for experience. It's not that the midlife crisis, you need to retire and go because, the power has shifted. I mean, earlier the power used to be in 50 to 60 years old. Now, if you look at the enterprises, the power has shifted to 30 to 40, 45. And we need to acknowledge that.
This is a very valid point. In fact, we always say that in the past world, we used to be even called as knowledge-based workers, right? The knowledge base has got zero value today. It is only a Google away, right? So any knowledge, which you say the pure data is only is omnipresent. It's becoming smarter and smarter. Then I like your point on the wisdom base. How do you utilize the knowledge and convert that into practical application? That's a skill which you're referring to, right? I mean, by the wisdom, the ability to apply the knowledge, ability to manifest that for a basic purpose, is that the the element which you are referring to?
Right, the understanding the relation, the human aspect of it, the relationship aspect of it. See, the AI is still a far away with respect to understanding the relationship. It's all, most of the progress today is in very narrow purpose AI application. Now, when I'm talking about wisdom, it's a general purpose AI. I mean, researchers are working on it. At least, we'll be very happy if we can see some part of it in our lifetime.
No, I think that we can be a little confident for at least for some time. We will be.
That's what I said.
Right, and even I again looked at a recent another experiment which they did, which is the chatbots chatting each other. Right. I mean, if you really look at how the Go game was optimized, was they started playing each other continuously. That's when it got its intelligence level went up. So you have that kind of challenges coming in, but that way the experience also, if you really look at that way, experience can also be created by these kind of scenario, but it can also have the danger of getting into a wrong path.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So combining that kind of capability with the real world data, real world insight, and modulating with that is the kind of possibility that would probably augment the journey towards singularity, right? I mean, in my view, the possibility of singularity is not a question. It's a question of how long would it take. And especially with the quantum computing and that kind of capability coming in, if the computation can be done 10,000 or 1,000,000 times faster than what it is being done today, it is theoretically a possibility. Now, then probably the mankind already started thinking about connecting the minds, like the big brain projects and things like that. So, which is where connecting, imagine you are able to look into the wisdom of all the mankind in this world through the big brain connection. So even that kind of fictional theories and experiments are going on. But let us not get to that level. We're coming to the current reality, at least next 10 to 15 years or 20 years. If you were to just say one thing before we move on to the next point, what would be the 2 or 3 points which every professional should look for in building their competencies or talents? If you can just, do you want to start with?
Like I said earlier, one is going to be continuous learning. You have to be a continuous learner is going to be the most important thing. The second one is, along with this continuous learning, that ego element has to come off, okay? It is not who is telling me, but what is telling me that is relevant. There is always this thing about in the past that, if this guy is a fresh out of college guy, then, he doesn't know anything. That has to change. Some of the fresh out of college guys know much more than 10, 20, 15-year-old experienced people. So that is the second thing. One is a continuous learning. The second is set aside your ego, learn from wherever you want to do. The third thing, which I think is important, something which I look at, try to see what is the social impact of what you do. When I say social impact of what you do, I'm just going to give a quick example, not really relevant to this thing, but there is a professor at MIT, an Indian professor, who actually, he works at the McGovern Brain Institute. And his entire focus is on how does the brain capture vision. Now, it's impossible to do that with small children. Nobody's going to allow you to do a scan or an EEG on a newborn child. But by the time the child is 6 months old, already the brain is trained in terms of how you capture vision. He came out with a project which was fully funded by the US government's NIH, where he said in India, in the northern part of India, child blindness is very high. He actually got the US NIH to fund a program. And today there are 425 children who have got back vision through surgery. And the professor now knows how the brain captures vision. So you need to start thinking differently. Think of a social impact on what you're doing. So I think this is something which I think would be important.
Just to add to, I think I would say two things. One, as Mr. Vijayaraghavan said, we need to look at some big use cases which can have a significant impact. It's not that small use cases does not matter, but big use cases will have much bigger, let's say, the amplification power is significantly bigger. I can definitely, if you look at many companies, you will find that that's a big difference between being hugely successful and being successful. The second aspect is from a Technology, I find a lot of, including my son, who is doing the second year computer engineering, he's all about algorithm, and then he wants to do algorithm. And I keep telling him that for once, can you please get into and understand what is that you are trying to solve? What is a business element that you solve? So that is also something which you need to pick, because if you look at the talents, we acquire a lot of talent, we do a lot of interview. One of the things that is very refreshing to see is somebody can connect that business and IT. So what are you learning for? And that is something important. The third aspect is some of the specific areas which is going to come up. So like AI is something big. Cyber is a very important aspect, which is again a big society impact. It's a huge gap. So finding out what are some of the things which will be relevant in the next, let's say 10 to 15 years, that what is being relevant today, which again be very helpful for you to be very, let's say, productive right from the start.
I think I totally agree with all of them, because when you talk about skilling for the future, it is what is the social impact you're going to create. So very, very closely aligned to the thought of Vijayaraghavan sir, because as you look at where are we heading to and what is the world heading to with the embedment of technology, not as a choice, but as a necessity, all your skilling and learning has to be a continuous development process. Educational institutions need to do it. People need to take on themselves as a self-learning that they have to do it, and then come to the fact of what is the academics going to do. They are going to sharpen this with domain knowledge, right? So getting the marriage between curriculum, academic, industry, and then finally landing with the purple man, as you said, it will be the most important part, because you don't hire today a business analyst alone. You want a techno-functional business analyst who understands at least some part of the area that he's attending to, if not the entire domain knowledge. So most of these roles are going to go into a multi-skilling roles and will no longer, I don't see anything that is single-skilled anymore. So as we hire, we look at, do you know A, B, and C? C is desirable, but A and B is a must.
So more about the broader skills, and I mean, it also holds good with the what you call multi-stack development.
Yeah, and as Vijayaraghavan said, as leaders, we need to go hands-on.
Hands-on.
So I know you do hands-on quite a bit with coding even now.
No, without that, you are completely out. I fully agree with that point. Now, there are some questions coming in. I think I will take it up toward the end, or should we cover now, or, I mean, some of the, yeah, because there are two more points. Let me just quickly take it up. One is, this is on the question from Professor Madhu Chandrakurup. While digital future, I think it will come up here. Will it come here? I said show. Yep, it's coming. It is to Vinod. While digital future sounds very interesting, how ready are we with the infrastructure to make it happen? Even today, we are long way to go in terms of simple solutions like automation, and we find infrastructure and mindset comes the way adopting it. Yeah. Can this change?
So let me give an analogy. I think it very well probably provides a kind of a cue to this. If you look at Jesse Owens and Usain Bolt, both won the world. They have world 100-meter record holders. Jesse Owens in 1936 won the medal, and of course Usain Bolt, is recently. Now, if you look at the speed, compare the speed at which both of them finish 100 meters, you will find that Jesse Owens will be behind by 14 feet. Now, it's not that in 100 years, the human capability becomes so big that you can run 100 feet faster on a 100-meter race. Now you look at the reason for that is that Usain Bolt runs on a very synthetic turf with very good blocks so that he can go off the block quickly, whereas Jesse Owens ran on a wooden dust, let's say, laid tracks where off the blocks he used to dig a small hole, and that was the block. And people have simulated in Stanford, people simulated that if the condition was same, what would have been the difference? Jesse Owens would have been just one stride behind Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt would have been faster. Now, the point I'm making is that the impact ecosystem can have on solving big problems. Now, you're very right that we don't have the support required for us to get off the block. And that is where probably we are working very closely as various associations with iSpirit and others with the government to give us a solid start so that we're not talking about protectionism, but we want to have a small, solid start off the block so that we can solve some big issues. I was talking earlier about the problems that a small entrepreneur will have to solve some of these digital issues. It is not meager. Now, you want to hire an Amazon server, it is $6,000 to $7,000 per month. And for a startup, it's a big cost. Now, if we have a public societal platform where, it's a government or whatever funding is available, where I can have that computation power with the data access, and that's a kind of starting off the block that we want. And that's the reason why companies in Silicon Valley is much more successful than what we are here. So we need a solid ecosystem. With respect to infrastructure, I think things are becoming multiplied. I mean, probably you know that Google has just released the TSUs, which is going to significantly improve the computation power. So I think some of the Western world went through very regimented routine of progress. We are missing some steps, which is good, like the mobile revolution. We missed many steps. We never had Western world went for the fixed line, then we went to mobile. We just bypassed the whole fixed line on the trust. Now, Western societies went for first a local trust, then an institutional trust, then a democratized trust. The institutional trust in India, we are completely, removed, and we are directly jumping into the democratized trust. So I think we can provide, the infrastructure, lack of infrastructure today is not going to be a barrier, provided we get a support or to get off the blocks. Digital India, the India stack, all of them are phenomenal. I'll give you an example again of UPI. 2016, UPI got launched. It was literally nothing till now. Last month, UPI, the number of transactions to UPI is significantly more than all credit cards, all ATMs, all banking transactions put together. And why is that so? UPI is a government-funded project, zero cost, and that is the kind of revolution that we are talking about. So my belief is that we can do, but we need some support on ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for that. I got some more questions coming up here. There are quite a few. Let me pick up one from the healthcare. This is regarding the healthcare. Question is how we ensure the reliability of digital diagnosis. Example, IBM Watson that can make mistake. What precautions can we take in the future?
It's been asked by Jacob from the hospital sector itself. But I think one of the things is that at the end of the day, like we said earlier, the doctor will remain. It is impossible to say that there will be no doctors and Watson will come and treat you and go. It's not going to happen. All that is happening is today you have a second consultation that you do in a complicated case. This is something which will always happen. You will have a second consultation which is there. So even in small case, you might do a second consultation. The second thing is it actually just helps you to validate what you have. And that is what will happen there. But what would happen on this is a lot of the information, like for example, when a doctor reads an X-ray and a radiologist reads an X-ray, there is a big difference in that. The doctor will get that in a case, that will actually get, a lot of that will get automated over a period of time with the AI and machine learning happening. So that kind of inputs is what is going to help the medical field, and you're going to become more and more efficient in that. So what would happen here is there would be several things which can be used, and these are all going to be tools which are going to assist the doctor. I don't think the doctor will ever get replaced with this. So that is what I think is going to happen. So you would really, if you have a wrong diagnosis, you might find that there is something there. But if you have a diagnosis and you think that the machine is giving you something wrong, you still have the right to go further to find out whether there is a problem there. But if you've made a wrong diagnosis and nobody knows about it, you have a problem. So this is something which is just to validate, support you in decision making, and that's what I think would happen.
Right.
Maybe you've got...
People talk this as augmented capability, right? So we only had augmented reality, which is coming only now, but it is going to happen in every field of human capability, right? Even you can have night vision goggles, right, which is helping, or that can become part of your vision with your glasses itself. And it's only a matter of time because the technology is going in a big way in terms of miniaturization. And that is one thing. I mean, probably if anyone want to talk, add on to the augmented capability, which is going to significantly, I think from a human, as a next generation human being, that is going to be, in my personal view, that is going to be one of the big difference, how we is going to be looking at somebody 50 years down the line and how their capabilities are going to be different versus what we are today. I mean, anyone want to comment on it?
I just want to add one more point, which is again very relevant to understand, particularly on the medical and any other automation. There are basically, people talk about 5 levels of automation, when the level 5 being absolutely automated. But at level 4 automation, there is an interesting thing happening with respect to the liability getting transferred. So at level 4, apparently, the liability will get equally split. So for example, if I'm doing an autonomous car with level 4, the liability goes to the OEM. Level 5 is completely OEM. I mean, completely go to OEM. Now that is a significant, because if I'm a provider and I'm going to release a product as a level 5 product, then I am taking the liability. If something goes wrong, I am taking the liability. So I think a lot more work need to be done before we get to level 4, level 5. The only segment which I'm aware of is going on level 4 today is autonomous car, and the regulation is catching up where there is a liability is fixed. Now to this Nandakumar's question on this augmented reality, I guess at this point in time, what I'm seeing very interesting, which is again making a big impact, is the sort of merging between the digital life and the real life, where I can create a digital twin. And what I mean by digital twin is that, take about anything that you want to analyze. Now I can create a very accurate digital twin, and then I can do all the analysis of the digital twin rather than going into the real world and doing the analysis, using virtual and immersed reality or whatever it is. And this is significant. I mean, I think Richie talked about some use cases with driving the drone and all. Across every industry, this digital twin is such a big impact. Oil rigs, mining. These are things which are very dangerous to go and do yourself. But the digital twin concept is becoming very easy to analyze and find out what kind of resources to be put. So I think it's real. I mean, you see for our day-to-day consumers, we see now people addressing Sarah and all. I can try the apparel myself. Just go in front of a mirror in some of the shopping mall, and I can select a dress, and it will look how I will look, and it will match everything to my dress, my figure, and it shows me. I mean, those are some of the things which are going to be really happening. And so it's quite, and I would say of the 5 AIs, which is becoming very real and where is money is to be made, one of them is this, what you talk about, the augmented reality and immersed reality, whatever you are talking about.
We also talk about augmented capability in terms of, when doctors, for example, the kind of analysis.
That is true. I mean, all the research shows that the current models are very precise. I mean, there are many case studies which says that doctors, particularly with respect to cancer and others, the doctor called out saying that it's not a cancer, but it's a very, very interesting case study. You can look it up, the cancer case study from Stanford, where one of the best, he's supposed to be top 3 doctors. He called a particular skin cancer as not a cancer, and he was using in parallel a system, and it called it as a stage 3 cancer. So he was very surprised that he calls it that not a cancer, and this device says that a stage 3 cancer. It was augmenting it. And he suggested that patient to do a test, and it was a stage 3 cancer. So it is not that the technology, narrow purpose-based AI technology is definitely making big strides. Narrow purpose meaning one purpose. I can only look at this. That same AI model cannot maybe look at diabetes. It's very narrow purpose, but that's doing very well.
Richie, do you want to,
No, well,
it's already covered. Then there are a few interesting questions which are coming up. Again, on this same topic, though, how about the edge that human have on wisdom? Going back to your question on the point on wisdom itself. The wisdom is a sort of, which is getting altered because of the bots decide what humans see on the screens. So how the filtering and the kind of reality being mutated, probably that would be the point, by these machines and how it is going to impact human judgment. I mean, is that the question? Would I cover the, hopefully, yeah, right? That's correct. So, anybody want to?
Okay.
Vinod, both of you can.
Yeah. So I think I have a slightly different take on it, and that is because of the kind of models that we are comfortable with, right? In the past 10 years, we have digital models where companies, I'll take an example like Google and Facebook, we were very comfortable then taking free service. And without realizing that the free service came at the cost of them using our data to change our opinion, right? Now, that is something which we were comfortable with. But what is very glad to see is that there are alternate models coming where, like Netflix and Amazon, where they're taking a subscription and they are developing, scaling a model whereby they are saying that there can be an alternate digital model of business where you can collect money and then you can tell the customer what I will use the data for and therefore do that. So I guess that if that becomes more prominent with regulations coming, a lot of the ability of these consumers to alternate my reality to an extent will come down. But I still acknowledge that the fact that even Amazon or Netflix is able to very narrowly suggest on the third day that this is what I should see as a movie or a serial is a matter of concern. If you look at from one angle, but again, a lot of people, they've done a lot of study. And please understand that 10 years back or 5 years back, if somebody came and told us that the human beings would love to not watch serials every week, but they will be more keen to watch 10 episodes in one go in one day, we would definitely tell them that you're being stupid. But what Netflix and Amazon has shown is that that is precisely what human beings are. That's what we love. So maybe the AI knows something more than we know about ourselves. So I think we'll have to wait and watch. So there is definitely an influence. We'll have to, and my feeling is that regulation will help in some way or other.
No, in other words, what you're saying is this should be modulated by the proper regulation, which would make sure that these kind of mutations don't happen. Right? Because the models naturally can be misled, and it can also be wrong based on the kind of data it uses. It could be, so there should be maybe another layer which is coming in, maybe doing the validations of these insights or intelligences.
A consent-based usage of my data, I'm very comfortable. Right. And I guess that will solve a lot of issues. It will not solve all of them, but to a large extent. I'm very happy that our country, we are going to launch the government is going to launch the DAPA architecture very soon, which means that like what in UPI, the government is going to come with the DAPA architecture where I can give a consent so that other service providers can look at my data, which is very progressive, probably the first country which is doing. And so we are doing some great things as a digital from a country perspective.
I got a few more questions and come back to you. One other point which came up is on how can we improve the higher education system in Kerala? What is your suggestion it is going to,
If you really look at something revolutionary, break up the university system. You can't really try to make amends because today the university system is for politicians who don't have education, then for teachers who don't want to teach and students who don't want to study, and then comes in the administrative system, and last it is the teachers who want to teach and the students who want to study. But anyway, I think one of the things which will happen here is that, like I said earlier, if we don't change, I think they will become irrelevant. So instead of us breaking them up, they will collapse on their own, which is what's happening with a lot of the government-driven things, which at some point of time, people will realize the impact of it. The other one, and this is something which is very important for all of us to do in a small way, we need to expose the politicians and the bureaucrats in some way. Okay, what we need to do is let us come out and tell where are they sending their children for studies. You look at the main politicians, you look at the main bureaucrats, the businessmen of course say that they want to change, so they're doing. You will find that most politicians send their children outside Kerala for their studies, probably because they don't get impacted by the hartals and the buns and things like that. Second thing is because they know that if they can go to a certain college in Chennai or a certain college in Bangalore or one of the top colleges in the Delhi University, they know that their children's future is taken care of. But somehow they don't want that to happen here, and that needs to get exposed. The second one is the teachers' organizations need to change because they don't want to, they don't want this continuous learning thing. They try to teach with the notes which their teachers taught them, which was taught by their teachers in the past. So this is another thing. So unless we look at something very, very radical there, you're not going to have that change happen. Because I think the worst thing was when the Kerala Technical University came about, it was first supposed to be a re-affiliating university, which means only engineering colleges which met a certain standard would be affiliated to that. But that, with the earlier UDF government, they just did away with that. This government came in and then they made it even worse. They got it filled up with politicians, the bodies, and then you also had things like, no, you can't do MOOC, you can't have, somebody came in, there was a big program where GE actually came in with a certain program they could do, which would help people go up. You can't give credits for anything where the private companies are involved. No credits for that. So actually we are trying to retain it at a level which was much worse than what it was earlier. And this is probably the only place in the whole world where the teachers are against academic autonomy. There is nowhere else where somebody will say, I want the right to decide what I will ask my student. No, they don't want academic autonomy because what happens with that is their accountability also comes out. Maybe we need to institute audit of classes. We need to introduce rating of teachers. And you will see that this will automate. And the other thing is, if you take mathematics as your main, you have to take physics, chemistry as your subsidiary. You can't take art, you can't take music, you can't take commerce, you can't take economics because some of those teachers will go without a job. So ultimately, we have to realize that higher education is for the students. It is not for the teachers. Now, the day we realize that as a society is when you will find the change happening.
Right. Can you raise your question, please?
So there is a serious misunderstanding regarding the singularity issue as far as A is concerned. Why? Because the calculation itself is wrong. From my understanding, maybe physicians can correct if I am wrong. So there are around 100 billion neurons connected to nearby 1,000 neurons switching at a frequency of 100 hertz. That is what the calculation of 10 power 16 that we are talking about when we reach singularity. Actually, these neurons are not single cells, which is represented by perceptrons in AI. So this is actually made of microtubules, which is a dipolar protein and which has got made out of tubinels, which is again 10 power 9 tubinels and switching at a frequency of 10 hertz. So basically the calculation will be 10 power 26. So you know the difference between 10 power 16 and 10 power 26. Second thing is like this is when it is subatomic level, it is not obeying the classical dynamics and
Computation.
computation. Yeah, which is based on like the logical kind of thing. So it can be superposition. So this will be as when you about the Schrodinger's equation. I mean Schrodinger's experiment. Just like that, if you just look at it, you can see that it will be switching between either of this state and they're actually the consciousness which you can replicate. So we talk about the intelligence, it is multiple layers. So you can talk about the very basic intelligence when a child is born, which is like the instinct. The entire body is having many multiple of neurons that we have in brain. So it is not to replicate that easy. I'm not just against it, but you should understand that difference between what we are trying to replicate. So when you reach consciousness, if I'm telling it is happening between the switching of these two states, So how we can replicate? Even with quantum computing, there are millions of, are we living with consciousness? Very few people only, enlightened.
No,
people.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the point is what the singularity is being defined is the kind of common sense level, maybe attaining that level. Naturally, we haven't even touched quantum computing. So what you're talking about is the consciousness level or the molecular force level of intelligence is far more which is unexplored for the human being. So that is another level of what you call another universe of intelligence. So we are not even getting there.
A big brain can be.
Exactly. So that is the level at which at least a common man's, what you refer as a common man's intelligence is something which is at least known as a what you call the intelligence level which you are talking about singularity today. Getting into, naturally when it comes to the human mind has got far more depth. That is what will evolve. Today, nobody is using even in their lifetime that one, right?
Yeah, maybe
So,
we can become robots. Robots cannot become us.
that's correct. That's the possibility. Even as you rightly said, in the quantum computing come in. So it's only going to begin to touch upon that possibility of the next level of what you call energy state level computation. So that's what you are alluding. I mean, that's my view. Anybody want to?
You said that about singularity. That's what I.
No, absolutely point. I mean, that is what we are saying. The next phase of humans are going to be an evolved species than what it is today. So if you really, I have got a philosophical answer to this. If you really look at what the humans are trying to do today is that we are trying to make your basic existence irrelevant because that just happens because robots are going to do it. Then what will you do with your life?
See,
So-
it's a rule of
So,
survival.
no,
It's survival.
it's a long debate. We don't want to, we can probably have an offline conversation about it. So in the past, if you go back to the yogic principle, they said, we get to a stage where you don't have to eat anything, and they went into what you call meditative state, by which they could
I
achieve.
would like to sit with you actually.
So I can get into that. That's a separate conversation, but that will be maybe a more than 2 hours conversation. So, but I would like to take this conversation to Mr. Vijayaraghavan again. There are a lot of questions coming on your comments. This is a long one, so I don't know. Let me pick up on something very quick. Can we make skilling aspirational to induce digital future at grassroots level? Can we?
I think
What can we do to
I
make?
think it is necessary for that to happen. That will, like I said, the big thing is going to be the change in the way we look at it, the way we impart our education. But I think what is going to happen is if we see a lot of successes in certain skills, typical of Kerala, you will find a lot of people trying to copy that and you will see that. So we need to actually find ways by which certain skills which are doing well actually get publicized. Unfortunately, what happens with that is the moment you find that there is something which is doing well, then you will suddenly find somebody who sets up a training center for that. Half these training centers don't work. So I remember when we first, around the time when Technopark was setting up in Karyavatam Junction, there was one board which said computer training and photocopy center. Okay? So you will find that everybody who is doing some kind of training will suddenly change the board to the new training which is there. But that is where I think it's necessary for us to look at what skills are, and that will get copied by others. That will happen. At the same time, the government has its own, the ASAP program is there, and those programs will probably need to get guided. There's now a new private partner coming up within that in each of those community skilling centers. So you will find that that will actually help to promote some of those because they need to be profitable. And when they have to be profitable, those who come through those centers will need to get. But I think at some point of time, government should not be trying to do this because government is too heavy and the cost on that would become very high. So slowly they will need to see how the private partners will drive those things.
Right. In fact, this is a very long question, but I think the essence of it is about that industry participation is what I understand.
So I'm not gone through the whole thing, but let me tell you, look, it's very easy for engineering colleges and professors in engineering colleges or teachers in engineering colleges to say, we want industry to work with us. The only people who can make that do are the teachers who are there. If you have a very good teacher who is really good, that means that person is capable of taking on a consultancy with the company, automatically he will get that. That college will get it. But if it's enough, if it's just promotional, we want to have industry interaction, nothing will happen. If you look at it, why do people go to an IIM or an IIT? They're going to a professor. They're not going to the IIT. They're going to the professor there who has the capability to deliver something which industry wants. When you tell that in the West, you find a lot of the professors at the top universities, their students get placed, it's all because of the quality of that professor. So it is not in industry's hands, it is in the hands of the teaching community there to come up with things and go to industry and say, look, I can do this for you. The moment that is happening, industry will take it. They'll try it out once. You get one chance. If you don't do well, they will never look at you again. So you have to come up with things which are really possible. So it is in the hands of faculty on whether that will happen.
A quick question on cyber security. Actually, why is it not coming? This is on how do we tackle the cyber threats in digital future. It is actually to me, but I would first ask Vinod to respond. And then
Okay. Now, I'll just lead in with what Mr. Vijayaraghavan said on the skilling. If I look at the number of people, it's about 3.5 million is the gap of cybersecurity professionals that are required today, 3.5 million, and that is expected to go to about 5 million by next year. Now, this is a big requirement that we need to cater to. Now, we have been engaged with the colleges because we have, at least starting with Bangalore and around in South India, we have been engaged very deeply with the colleges to figure out how to create a curriculum. And some of the challenges that Mr. Vijayaraghavan mentioned are really coming up. The professors are not very keen. But one thing that has worked very well for us is that with millennials, we have figured out that gamification is a great way to engage them. So we have gamified the whole IoT, we focused on IoT security. We have gamified the whole IoT security, and we put labs where we provide a cyber city, or rather a smart city, and one team attacks them and one team prevents them. So this has been a big hit, and most of colleges are going on doing it. But to answer the question on cybersecurity, what can be done? Well, the reality is that you will get attacked cyber-wise or IoT threat. It's just a question of when. It's not will you get attacked, you will. It's a question of when. The only way is for you, and you can't deal with it alone. You need to have the ecosystem supporting you. You need to have the regulation, many things supporting it. So there's a lot more intelligence that need to be built. We need to have a lot of capabilities built in. And cybersecurity, again, today it is the most form of attack even by countries to countries. So it is something which we cannot outsource. This is as a country, as an entity, as a society, we have to develop our own capabilities. So there's no other way. We need to create those capabilities here, get the ecosystem working, have a lot of interactions with all the stakeholders, and that's the way to go.
Richie, if you want to cover it.
Yeah, and this is a key area of focus in the industry. And I always ask the question to my startup friends and entrepreneurs is how many companies are focusing in cyber in this area in our ecosystem today, right? So very few. It has to do with a lot of skilling. It has to do with a lot of interest in that. The commercial viability is definitely there, right? The use cases are definitely there. And it's an area that is I think will be the unicorn that is coming up very soon.
Just one thing on the cyber thing. There's somebody who who calls me once in a while sitting in Delhi. He's actually working on a huge cyber project for one of the government departments. Okay, and he had called up the other day saying, "Can you let me know where are the capabilities I can find?" So if there is anyone who has capabilities in that area, please, as I move out, just come and give me your card and I'll put you in touch with him. It's a huge project which is going to go for a few years. So it's necessary that, but because they can't use anything which is related to the foreign this thing at all.
So I just add one point on top of it. To be frank, we believe in the future the warfare will be conducted in the cyber world, right? So that is the level at which the importance of that is getting into. So that is why, as Vinod rightly pointed out, it is just not about an individual fighting, coming out of something. It is going to be national capability. That's what most of the countries are doing. And it is a threat. Of course, it's a catch-up game all the time. And it is something which need to be built as a capability of, actually for the whole mankind. And hopefully there will be some technology which will be coming out in the future, which will be at least an evolution in its nature like the immune system in the human body, right? Something like that. Okay, I think we just ran out of 0 time, perfect time. And there's one more question there. Okay, please, only one question.
Sir, I'm coming from Cochin University of Science and Technology, and I'd like to place a question to you.
Student or staff?
Yeah.
Student or staff?
I'm an assistant professor in School of Management Studies, sir. And I'd like to tell you that if the system, I'm not against the Cochin University or the state government or anything, but I'd like to tell you that if you're placing clutches on the legs of the professors and asking us to run, how do we run? I mean, I tried to tell you that there are lot of regulations being kept on us, and we are unable to change that, and we are asked to run at par with that. So that is one question. That is the number of hours to be taken, the number of research papers, and you have to be in the class. And in spite of this, when the professors are trying to do the research and come to the society, again the system is not responding to that, because I
think
have
she's already standing there, so your question, I'll quickly respond to that, okay? I won't take too long. One, you are from within the system. The easiest way to break the system is from within the system, okay? But I don't agree with teachers who say that I can't take classes because I've got research to do, or I can't do research because I have teaching to do, okay? It's very clear that you should be able to do both, because your salary scales have been fixed on the basis of certain number of papers that you have to publish in refereed journals and not in your college magazine. All right, so that's very clear. So the quality of teachers has to improve, and you have to fight it from within the system, otherwise it will not work. I'm going to give you one example which I would not have if you said you. I did that when I spoke to some faculty the other day. Cochin University, a few years ago, I had a call from somebody in the US saying there are 2 students who are doing some exceptional work. And he said, can you put me in touch with them? I found out, I gave the address to that person, I spoke to the students, and then this person calls me back from the US and he's fuming. And he said, I wanted the students to come, not the professor. Okay? The students who were being invited to the US, the professor said the professor would go and not the students, all right? And when I called up the students, they said, sorry, we can't, because one guy said my defense is coming up in the next 3 weeks, and the other person said, if I do that, I will never get my PhD. The problem is that it has to be fought from within. Good teachers should identify the bad teachers and isolate them. I don't think it's up for a discussion, because I think the time is up and Nandakumar needs to conclude.
Right. All right, thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to the excellent panel here, and thank you very much. I would allow to conclude, summarize this, but at least one point which I take from you is the need for the wisdom workforce. With that, let us conclude this. Thank you very much.
What an invigorating session indeed, and it traversed so many knowledge areas, but then the key takeaway, of course, is that learning has to be continuous and consistent. Whether you learn, unlearn, or relearn, we have to keep learning. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Nandakumar. I request you to present the mementos to our panelists. Mementos and our dear Chekuti, of course. Some brilliant ideas there on how we can tap into the digital future. As I mentioned, they traversed a really wide spectrum of knowledge areas. Fabulous insights there. Gentlemen, if we could ask you to pose for a picture for a moment with our memento and Chekutis. Thank you. Yes. By the way, the Chekuti story is coming up in the afternoon for all of you, in detail, from the horse's mouth. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.